Hi everyone. We're live at the mid-length filmmaker talks at the Philosophical Film Festival 2020 in some adjusted arrangement that is this new situation requires. Tonight, very happy to have with me Perttu Saksa, the creator of a very beautiful, very poetic mid-length film called Animal Image. You can see it, of course, in
Hi.
our virtual room. Hello, Perttu.
Hello.
So you're in Finland at this point?
Oh yes, yeah. It's a beautiful spring night here in Finland.
And the environment, going straight into the movie, the environment in your film plays a critical role in its entire aesthetics, but also in the topics that you raise. Can you give us some more insight about how that came to be, how the inspiration about the film came to be?
Well, the film is loosely based on a book that the character in the film, nature photographer Heikki Villamo, was doing at the time. He was doing this kind of fictional journey of in a man's relationship with animal from the ice age to the modern times. I know it has kind of a starting point of being in this kind of bare winter landscape that's actually situated in northern Norway and Iceland, and then it's moving to Finland and old forests and places in Finland.
It's a very intensive experience, I must say, because it combines image, it combines music, and combines spoken word in a very, I would like, very fitting conglomerate, and to create this incredibly poetic experience that brings you a bit slow, but it from the very start puts you in an incredible imagery of nature. How much your photography background actually influenced the style of the film?
Well, I would say that the style of the film, like if we are talking about the combination of music and spoken word and this kind of static images, I would say that it's more based on my relationship with music, and more specifically, it's inspired by a Finnish avant-garde drummer called Edvard Vesala. As a young guy, I used to play drums, and I got quite seriously about it, and got into improvisational jazz music and so on. And Edvard Vesala was huge influence for me, and he made many albums with combining spoken word and improvisational music. And it kind of, when I saw the film that I had made, I kind of realized that it's quite close to the albums of Edvard Vesala in a way, that combining, making a kind of space with the music that the spoken word is kind of thrown into. And basically improvisation is kind of, I would say, maybe emotional language between man and animal in a film.
A lot of elements into the story itself, they do insist on this basic relationship of humans with both animals and nature itself, that at some point it says that it's out of reach for the contemporary human. And definitely the imagery gives certain feeling of abandoning landscapes. They're so immense, yet they're so empty in that sense. And like, do you see that main point of the entire work lays into this basic relationship that you want to explore?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that it's the core of the film there, and of course, it's at the same time it's very personal film in a way that I'm exploring my own relationship with music, having these two amazing jazz musicians playing the soundtrack for the film and editing on top of that. It's very close to the ideas of playing music or doing avant-garde music, kind of reacting to something that someone else is doing. And I kind of like it as a presentation of nature in that way, that you are making something that's not narrative in that way as you are seeing nature films, because narratives are not existing in nature that way. And it's kind of nice of making something that's keeping the emotions on the point when you are looking at something.
And how did this relationship with Verneri Pohjola and Mika Kallio, the musicians that made the sound, the music for your film, how did it develop? How did you work together? Was there any specific process that that you would go through? Because you said it was very not unlike avant-garde music playing, where you would respond to the other. What was that process like?
The process was really free. That I booked a studio for one day, and we went there with Verneri and Mika. They started improvising, and I kind of showed them some clips of the film, some raw material, and asked them to improvise something on top of them, on those films, kind of creating a feeling or tempo or space on top of that. And I reacted on that and started developing some ideas of what they should do more, and it was very fluent in a way. And basically I had more or less 30 raw tracks from the studio that I mixed and edited on top of that. It was really loose also, the editing process. It was more controlled by the sound than the image in a way.
Going to the image, it's incredibly, it's just an astounding photography that we see, and also longer shots, a lot of them shot in slow motion, just to let you be in the space as long as you can. And how difficult was to film this film, because a lot of it is happening in nature and a lot of it is with wild animals.
Well, I have a background in wildlife photography when I was a bit younger, and it was kind of some kind of return to that world. And well, I would say that I was very lucky when I was making the film. I shot it in, let's say, more or less 2.5 years, and basically I had some animals that I wanted to have in the film that were important animals for Heikki Villamo, who's a character in the film, and I tried to get material as much as I could and started editing out of that. And of course there's maybe 99% is of the material is something that I didn't use, but amount of hours spent in doing filming this is quite much.
What is the process like when you're filming with the animals? You're getting quite close to some animals, including bears, but also very close to foxes. And there is a very beautiful scene, which I would also like to get into a bit more, about how you start recognizing yourself into these foxes when they sleep. How do you approach animals when you film?
Well, well, for example, the foxes in the film are shot quite close to urban areas in the forest, close where there's a lot of people moving and so on. That animals are not that scared of you. Of course, they are wild animals, but still they are a bit easier to reach than animals in some deep forest, for example. And I had these sentences that are based for the spoken word in the film, and of course I tried to visualize those, try to find situations that I could use in the film.
There is a specific moment that I wrote down that it stayed with me, and it goes like this: if you want to connect to someone, you have to think about the individual, not about a member of a species, but that particular individual whom you're facing. Something about the essence of the animal is revealed, of course, into that situation. Can you tell us more about the idea behind that thought, and how did it relate with the imagery?
Well, of course, the text in a film is based on books by Heikki Villamo, and he's a man who has been photographing, spending time with animals for more or less 50 years. And he has such a great experience with the animals and profound information of interacting with them. And I really admire his writings, that the way he's writing in really essayistic style about nature and animals. And it's of course it's demanding of trying to visualize that in some way. And as I said, I'm very lucky of having some material that in a way is interacting with the text also. With this particular text that you mentioned, there's pictures of ravens and crows that are sitting on a foggy landscape by the sea, and it's kind of charming for me that the animals you are looking at that point are really common animals, something you see like even you are not a nature person, you could see them in a town or something, like on a roadside or something like this, and you rarely look at them as individuals, and they are all quite often representing the whole species for us.
But the connection must be done individually, of course.
Well, of course, that's a nice hope or idea of having, but when we are watching wild animals, we don't of course meet them in a way that we would hope to meet wild animals. They don't meet us in a way. They don't need us.
But do we need them?
Of course, we need them. We need them to. We need them to reflect who we are.
There are several different animals that show up in the film. There are seagulls, there are some wild horses, I think there were seals as well, of course different types of birds, the foxes, badgers, and the bear. How were you deciding what type of scenes to create for the text? Like, did you have any specific emotions that you thought about when you were working with, like, taking images of these animals, or you were trying to capture, or you were led by how the entire scene would unfold by itself?
Well, I had some let's call them key species. I had some species that I really wanted to include the film because they were, in a way, the film is a portrait of nature photographer Heikki Villamo, and those are important animals for him, and he's writing about them a lot, like bear and foxes, for example. And I also excluded some animals that I spent significant amount of time photographing, but were not succeeding in a way. So it's always kind of a compromise of doing something like this. And luckily, when you are open on the material you are working on, it's kind of leading you in some ways that you are not maybe haven't written yourself of doing, and in a way it can be really lucky of choosing those.
Nice. Before we continue, I would like to tell anyone who is following us that you are feel free to send us any questions if you have for Perttu, and we will ask them. So feel free to write in the Q&A sections, and we can read one. And we have one, the first one from Dana. It goes like this: I'm not sure if it is a question, maybe more of an impression needed to be shared. I find incredible how, in the same time, these images are both so abstract and so concrete. In the same time, the synesthesia achieved in your film between the images and the sound. What my question might be is, how was it like a photographer working with another photographer, juxtaposing each other's way of seeing and vantage points, molding it into a single image or set of images?
That's a nice question.
Yes.
I've been thinking that a lot on a way of, well, I was traveling with Heikki in Iceland, for example, for some time, and I've been thinking about this, like, of that. Well, in some point, I had to confess for him that I'm actually doing a portrait of myself at the same time, not about him so much, and it kind of got into its own way, the film. And he's a very nice guy. He accepted it, and we are still friends and everything.
Thank you for the question, Dana. If you have any other questions, also feel free. We'll be happy to read them. I wanted to ask you more about the scene with the bear. It is a moment of escalation. At least that's how I felt it. It had definitely something to do with the music, that it gets just a bit more violent maybe in that moment, but in a contrast with everything else before and after, it's definitely a bit more aggressive moment. Did you had specifically in mind to really use the bear as a emotional pinnacle of the film?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think the bear is, in a way, it's the most important animal in the film, in a way that's more personal. That's maybe because I spent so much time with Heikki and with him in photographing bears, and we were sharing a photography hide, spending time together in the forest and talking about bears a lot. And maybe it could have been longer also, the part with the bears, but and of course it's an animal that's really a powerful animal, and you feel like you want to investigate it in that way. But at the same time, I feel that bear has been often represented in a quite wrong way. It's very fragile animal. It's big animal, but at the same time it's very quiet and very shy. And encountering bears in a photography hide in middle of a forest in the nighttime. It's very unique experience. It's totally different than something you would maybe experience in a, let's say, commercial photography business that you have this in Scandinavia. You see bears in a swamp or these big open areas that they are walking there in sunset light and so on. It's totally different than that. And also the representations of bears are really different than mine or Heikki's experience of the bear. And we are talking about that a lot. And I tried to visualize that. And I feel that the music in that part, which is really, you can hear Werner's voice there, he's screaming to the microphone, and it's something that he did without any knowledge of the bear or the film with the bear at the same time. It's something I did in edit, and it's based on just my emotions, and it has no like concrete ground for doing that. It's just something I needed to do.
The entire movie, and I will tie this to the bear as well, reminds me a lot to Sebastião Salgado's work in Genesis, when he's going very close to some very dangerous animals like gorillas. And when he's talking about the necessity of recognizing your place in that relationship as a human that is outside of its element, and being a guest in front of a very powerful animal is critical in order to establish that relationship. How was that for you two when you were filming the bear outside of the hideout? Because there are some images where I believe the bear is very close to you. I mean, it can definitely move towards you right away, like in a split of a second, and reach to you if it wants. Like, how is that relationship built?
Well, those images are made inside a photography hide. Mm-hmm. That bear is maybe sensing in a way that you are close by, but I think it doesn't really acknowledge that you are inside something. I think it doesn't realize that the hide is hollow. It may be thinking that it's a stone or something like this, and it's not a scary moment at all, or something I find colonialistic the way that Saldago, for example, is doing the whole Genesis project in a way. But I really wouldn't like to think nature photography as kind of heroic stuff that is quite often presented. I'm more interested in personal experience.
So there is no, or at least you try to avoid a political statement in your this specific work. I would say, like, it's getting very emotional, and even though you're exploring this basic question of where do humans belong, it is still about your experience to the space, to the where you are, where you're filming. Do you also see some of these topics regarding human political behavior as something that is outside of this environment, and that is something that we miss it, that we can learn something from the nature and the relationships in nature?
Yeah, that's in a way that's quite difficult question. I would say that it's very important to acknowledge your place in a nature, of course, and I wouldn't say that that specific place or time that we are now couldn't exist without this strong connection to the past and what we have been doing for the planet. And I think it's important that we would keep idea present that we are changing the planet and we have huge responsibility and depth that we owe for the planet in a way. And we shouldn't be thinking ourselves as excluding ourselves of the nature as we are doing at the moment. I don't know, maybe this is not answering at all to your question, but
no, actually is going in a direction that I really did have in mind, because my impression of the film was that you do reflect a lot on our seclusion from these relationships, and on several occasions that fleeting landscape, that relationship that is outside of our reach is in the focus. And I did get a feeling that by placing the camera in a very specific way, and especially when you allow the animals to look at us, it is a feeling as if you want to create that you want to create into the viewer of being in a place that used to be filled by our presence physically. And you do this by allowing the animals to recognize the viewer, especially this one shot with the owl, the turning of the owl and looking it, and when it looks straight into the camera, it really created that feeling that the nature that is abandoned suddenly recognizes us. It's like the return of the long lost child back home, and it was a very very powerful moment. Were you thinking about creating this type of feeling into the viewers?
well, of course, but I think it's more complicated. It's something that nice idea is that if you are watching the film, you would realize that animal is not watching at you; it's watching at human world. I mean, like in a larger sense, it's looking at another culture or another world, and it's something that if you as a viewer or as a nature photographer present are realizing that you are closer to something that maybe placing yourself in a world.
We have another question here from Alexander. He asks, the name of the film is Animal Image. If image, seen from, so to say, philosophical point of view, is telling a vivid story through a still chronotopic moment framed in a visual medium, and the experience that I get from the film was an emotional, deep, poetical synesthesia of visual and auditive. And also the film has a great photography. Was your idea to make some kind of emotional, poetic bridge between those two states, stillness and motion, and also to go in depth of the image through the motion and the music? Very nice question from Alexander.
Yeah, well, the name of the film, Animal Image, it's actually in a text in the film that's Heikki Villamo's text that he's describing these little foxes in a forest, that there's like 3 different kind of fox puppies that he was looking, and they had all of them had different characters, and together they formed him an image of an animal image of the fox, and it was kind of really nice way of looking at animal, and the name comes from there. And about it's actually also bit to your question before about the relationship between the moving image and the presence of the animal. I would say that the music is the most important part in this moment with the animals here. That it's the emotions are more present, and of course the music is based on time and on absence of time or stillness of time, and the time is very important part over there. And also when you are moving something in the slow motion, it's also kind of uplifting the importance of movement, of the movement in time. And well, this is going a bit far now, but for me, one important idea has been this idea that actually, if we think about humans and animals, we are kind of two species at the same planet, but living in different worlds in a way. That, let's say, for example, horse. Someone has told me that 1 human second is maybe 7 seconds for horses' experience. And if you start to think about the presence of time for different animals, it's really separating us in a different worlds. And I think all these kind of notions, that when you are keeping these ideas alive, when you are looking or thinking about animals, they are like they are really complex ideas, but they are like making you more aware of your own place and own situation in the world.
Very nice. We have 2 more questions. We have one from an anonymous person, and it goes like this: do you think we will see more of poetic documentary filmmaking in the future? How is the situation in Finland?
Well, I don't really follow that. I have to confess that I don't really follow that much about filmmaking in Finland, but I'm really hoping that we will see more avant-garde films, contemporary avant-garde films.
And we have another question from Lucio. He asks, last year we had the opportunity at the festival to see the legendary 10 Minutes Older from 1978 from Hertz Frank, and Bridges of Time from 2018 by Christina Bride, with her attendance in Skopje from the Baltic School of the Poetic Documentary Film. What is the relationship of the poetic documentary film with the Baltic School of Poetic Documentary Film? Is there any connection in influence, approach, topics, aesthetics, and so on?
Well, I'm not familiar with Baltic documentary school in that way, but if I have some things that I've been following with this film, is maybe films of Belatar, for example, his long one-shot films and the importance of audio and music in these films.
Yeah, there are some shots in Turin Horse that probably could fit right into animal image. Okay, so we're already a few minutes off the schedule. Yes, we are. If we have any more questions, please feel free to ask them. Perttu, thank you very much for this conversation and for opening to us this world that not many people have the chance to experience, and especially to experience it in such a raw and intimate way. Thank you for your time, and thanks to everyone who asked their questions. And I hope to see you soon at some point in Skopje. Maybe next year on the festival, once the situation is different.
Hope so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks to everyone in the audience. Yes, feel free to watch the other movies at the Philosophical Film Festival. They're all available. And of course, to watch Animal Image. Have a great evening.